Hello and welcome to Beer Fest. Wait, what? No, Fantasy Joker Sunday Live.
I'm just so sick and tired. I'm hanging on a wire, a foot over the fire, and it's burning. I can feel it inside. Done with the same cliche, done with the day after day. There's got to be a way. Now is the time to break the tie. I'll live, I'll die for what is wrong and what is right. I'll take the pain for all the ones without a name. To be invincible, we'll be invincible. To be invincible, we'll be invincible.
Yeah, we are up early for the time change, and we are ready for the Germany game.
Deine Oma ist Apfelkuchen! Trink, 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 trink! Schluck, schluck! Was sehe ich denn hier? Und? Weg damit! Weg damit! Schneller, schnell, schnell, schnell! Und trinken, trinken, trinken! Schlucken, schlucken, schlucken! Hoch, 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 hoch! Gut, 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 gut! Hier, hier, hier!
So first question of the day, straight from the Fantasy Football Q&A. We're going to start it off with a quarterback stream question. Mac Daddy Jones or Deshaun Watson? So for me, I'm going to go with probably Mac Jones. They're facing the Commanders. Commanders have been a pretty decent matchup on defense, and they just got rid of their pass rushers. So you can expect Mac Jones to have a little bit more time to get things done. Whereas the Browns have the Cardinals. Now, the Cardinals just traded Josh Dobbs. So expected today, I think, is Clayton Tune. It would be a surprise Kyler Murray if he actually played, because I think he's active and technically could, but I'm still expecting it to be Clayton Tune, and so I don't think the offense is going to be very good, which is going to limit the chances of Voldemort, and the Cardinals' defense is underrated. So, yeah, I'm rolling with Mac Jones there. I like the matchup, and I don't like the fact that the Browns should have a relatively easy game against the Cardinals. Now, it's the NFL. Crazy shit happens all the time, but I think Myles Garrett's going to feast today on Clayton Tune. Here we go. Josh Downs, Devonta Smith, or Jordan Addison. So I'm going to have to check in on Downs. There's tons of injuries, too. I mean, between the quarterbacks, the litany of quarterback injuries, but also just with the actual players. I have Josh Downs in tons of places, so I'll check in on him. So it looks like he's active. So he's on track to play Sunday, according to Sleeper, per Adam Schefter of ESPN. So it is a knee thing, though, so that could potentially slow him down. But he's been a really good PPR option. But between Devonta Smith and Addison, I mean, Cowboys-Eagles, I'm trying to get in on that matchup because I feel like that potentially could be a very high-scoring matchup. Yes, the Eagles' defense is very good in the front seven. Like, their run defense is excellent, but their pass defense, not so much. And with the Cowboys, yeah, the Cowboys' defense has been fantastic, but they've also had missing pieces and injuries themselves. This feels like it could actually turn into like a high-scoring game. That's what I'm hoping for. So I'm trying to get in on even some of the auxiliary pieces, like Brandon Cooks in this matchup. So, yeah, Devonta Smith is definitely in play for me. And with the quarterback questions for the Vikings, I mean, I feel like Devonta Smith is the easy answer there. It could still end up being Addison, but it feels like a longer shot with what should be Jaren Hall under center today. So unless Jaren Hall actually ends up being a thing, But I don't understand like how you could expect Jaron Hall to be excellent on the one hand, but like they just traded for Josh Dobbs, clearly probably because they don't believe that Jaron Hall is a long-term starter. And so because they just traded for Dobbs, as much as, you know, Baker Mayfield or did it that one time where he played like the week he was traded, usually that's not a viable way to run your team. So Josh Dobbs might just need a week or two to get acclimated to the offense. DJ Moore or Chris Godwin, flip a coin. I don't feel like it's a flip a coin for that one, actually. I actually feel like it's decently on the side of Chris Godwin. The Bucks have the Houston matchup. Houston defense kind of been touch and go. They've had their games, but for the most part, they can still be had. I like Chris Godwin as the PPR option. Baker Mayfield has played surprisingly well, I feel like, this year. I kind of like the Bucks Texans for potentially sneaky shootout. And I felt the same way about Panthers Texans, last week. And I ended up being incorrect. So hopefully this can turn into a bit of a high scoring game. And I think I would go with Godwin over DJ Moore. Let's see here. All right. A lot of Godwin. See, Godwin, DJ Moore, Jordan Addison. It's still Godwin for me. Godwin feels like a very safe PPR floor play. Oof, here's a tough one. Chuba Hubbard or Zach Moss. So Zach Moss has been excellent, but Chuba Hubbard has a great matchup and was officially named the starter. The Colts have been giving it up in all aspects, it feels like, of fantasy, getting in these shootout games. It is in the same game. The Panthers defense, it feels like, has been showing up, but you have to go with the trend, it feels like, of Zach Moss. Though, you know what it is? Here's the thing. So it really depends on my team. If I am 5-2 and I'm just looking for the safe floor play, like I just want my RB2 to get a guaranteed 10 points because the rest of my team is set, then I'm going to go with Zach Moss in that situation, because even though he's splitting with Jonathan Taylor, it just feels like he's more likely to get the 10 points. Like, he's got that safe floor. Whereas with Chuba Hubbard, yes, he has a higher ceiling if he can actually be the full starter, and especially in this matchup with the Colts, if he gets the full workload and has a good game, he will outscore Zach Moss, but his floor potentially could also be a little bit lower. He got a lot of work last week. It wasn't super efficient. So again, if I'm shooting for the moon, because there's a lot of teams out there that are 2-6, and you need a ceiling play, then I'm going to roll with Chuba Hubbard. So I have in my main league, actually, just full visibility, I have not done well in that league. It's been mostly lineup decisions too, which sucks. I should have 3 more wins, but I straight up benched them because maybe from having too many leagues, trying to hedge my bets, and whatever case led to the decision, I ultimately made the wrong decision. I'm 2-6 in that league. So in that league, I would start Chuba Hubbard. In my dynasty league, I'm 6-2. Like I would start Zach Moss in that situation because it's like the rest of my lineup I'm pretty comfortable with, and I just want that safe floor for my RB2. But he is splitting with Jonathan Taylor, and it does feel like that situation, even with how good Zach Moss has been, could eventually evaporate, though. It does feel like there's room for 2 running backs in that offense, given that they're going to rely on Minshew mania for the rest of the year. So again, safe floor play Zach Moss, but if you're going for the ceiling, you're just trying to reach for it, and it could end up not working out. But I'm going with Chuba Hubbard if I just need the ceiling. Cooper Kupp or Mike Evans with Stafford out. So I think it's Brett Rypien is going to be the quarterback for the Rams. And historically, he's never really been that great. But normally when a quarterback like that does come in, they hyper target like the primary asset, which would be Cooper Kupp. So I could see Cooper Kupp having a 6 for 60 kind of game, but I'm rolling with Mike Evans. I said earlier I'm hoping for the shootout between the Bucs Texans. It's been a little bit more on the quieter end. Maybe it's also a little bit of wish casting for CJ Stroud and his fantasy relevance, because I'm having to rely on him in a few places. But ultimately, I think I'm actually going with the upside there of a Mike Evans, who it does feel like could have a huge game versus Houston, even though it's on the road. Whereas with Cooper Kupp, it just feels like even though it's Cooper Kupp and he's immensely talented, whether it's Brett Ripien or I literally don't even know the other name of the quarterback that they signed. I think his last name is Dressen or something like that. I would have to Google it. I remember seeing like the news of the signing and just being like, well, that's a nothing burger. Here we go. Defense question. One of the rare defense questions. Pats defense or Chargers defense? I actually like the Chargers a lot with the Monday night matchup, even though the Jets haven't been turning the ball over as much and have been kind of quietly getting it done in low-scoring games with Breece Hall and Garrett Wilson. The caveat there is that they've been low-scoring games kind of no matter what, and that gives you a safe baseline. And I think the Chargers defense has some sneaky talent where they can actually potentially cause some turnovers, get some sacks, get after Zach Wilson a little bit. You know, Khalil Mack, when he's healthy and he's having a good game, can still kind of turn it on and be Khalil Mack every once in a while. And the rest of the defense, can kind of get around that. I think the Chargers have been a little bit snake bitten and they need this game to push to 50-50. So I'm rolling with the Chargers on Monday night. And then Cowboys defense. You could take Cowboys defense versus Philly. I'm expecting more of a shootout in that game. And of the two defenses that I would want, I would prefer the Eagles defense because it just feels like if there's one offense that could potentially not show up, it's more likely to be the Cowboys, just historically speaking. So I'm still rolling. I think I'm rolling with Chargers defense over all three of those. Though there is like a sneaky thing in the back of my mind of like Sam Howell, even though he's been playing really well and having like really fantasy relevant games, has been prone to getting sacked like a ton and turning the ball over, and it's Bill Belichick. I could end up being wrong. So maybe New England is actually the safe play there. But it feels like Howell's been kind of on fire lately, right? I thought there was a chance he could get benched after the 4 interception game. So maybe he has another dud game like that, and it really is Pat's defense. Kind of second guessing myself here. Yeah, I'm changing it. Chargers going to Charger, right? And it's Monday night. It's prime time. Yeah, I'm going to roll with Patriots, actually. I'm going to change my answer. A little pivot there. Tinkering. Hey, we all do it, right? I don't pretend to be also like an analyst or an expert. I'm very much just like a player. I've been doing it since I was like 20. I'm 33 now. So, I've been playing for 13 years. I've played through a bunch of different modes and variations, but I'm always learning. I'm always trying to learn new stuff. So I'm just as much still a fan and in the thick of it with you guys. But yeah, Chargers going to Chargers. Certain real life aspects of football to me definitely override like fantasy football. Some comments coming in. We'll prioritize some of the comments here over, and then I'll get back to the Q&A stuff. Shout out also to anyone watching. Appreciate you guys joining so early on the Sunday live. I've been up since 5 a.m. because my dog was just scratching at the cage. Just like more passion, more energy. She's used to getting up at like 6 a.m. with me, so she did not know about the time change and wouldn't care anyways. First question from my boy, Tyler Bradley. Shout out to you. Would you start Zeke or Roshan? Ugh, that's gross, but I'm starting Zeke. Roshan's been a non-factor. Even though Deonta Foreman struggled, I predicted that last week. Deonta Foreman has always kind of had his ebbs and flows. I'm just gonna go check in real quick on Roshan because it just he feels like one of these like snap percentage characters that really hasn't done anything of note. Yeah, 6 for 21, 3 for 10. I'm not counting on Roshan just usurping the job from Deonta Foreman. I think they like Foreman, and Foreman already had the smash game for them. Against New Orleans on the road, it's rough. And again, I know everyone was kind of fooled last week into the matchup, but Foreman still ultimately had 10 touches, so he's still leading the backfield in touches, going to lead in carries. And it's a bad matchup. I'm probably avoiding both, but Deonta Foreman sneakily is one of those guys that he could potentially have a decent game. I'm not expecting like the 30 burger that we saw with Vegas because it is a road game against New Orleans, but I could see him having, kind of the 10-point floor play because people are going to pivot away after what happened last week. And then next week against Carolina, to me, he's a smash play. So hold on to Deonta Foreman if you have him. And I'm going with Zeke officially. Excuse me. Was offered, shout out to Domo here in the comments, was offered Deebo Samuel and Pacheco for Waddle and Gus Edwards. I really like Isaiah Pacheco, but I don't feel like he's enough of an upgrade over Gus Edwards to move off of Jalen Waddle in this Miami offense to Deebo Samuel, who's been injured. I like Deebo Samuel a lot, but when he's not available, it really hurts your team. Now let's just go check in on Deebo and see what's going on. Plus, he's on a bye week right now, so he's definitely not available this week. It says he's ready to go. So coming out of the bye, hopefully he's recovered from the 2 weeks off. And they do have a decent schedule, but I mean, the Dolphins have been so good. And Gus Edwards has been like a key cog to the running game for the Ravens, which is a good running game to have a piece of. So again, the upgrade to Pacheco is just not enough for me. I'm sticking with Waddle and Gus Edwards there. Also off Kittle or Kelsey for Kittle and Gus. Yeah, if you could move George Kittle and Gus Edwards and you have the running back depth to absorb that to pivot into Travis Kelsey, I would definitely do that. Even though Travis Kelsey hasn't been I think what everyone really wants him to be, which is like kind of at the insane level that he has been for years. And I get it. I've been a Travis Kelsey owner for a long time in dynasty leagues. And in redraft, this was honestly the first year that I said like I was pivoting away from Travis Kelsey and Mahomes because I had been priced out of the market. Just Kelsey, especially going, mid first round. I always was a proponent of taking, if you had the 112 to just double tap Kelsey Mahomes, like that was excellent value. But at the 106 where you're getting Kelsey and then probably not able to get Mahomes by the time it gets back to you in most leagues anyways, with the popularity of the Chiefs and, just how good they've been. But he's still been basically like the best tight end in fantasy football. He has the highest ceiling. And his bad games, 6 for 58 is considered a bad game for Travis Kelsey. So with George Kittle and his volatility, and again, assuming you have like other really good running backs, that trade I would make. I would trade Kittle and Gus to get into Travis Kelsey. Even though they've got the bye week coming up, they've got just tons of high-scoring matchups coming up too. They've got Miami this week, and then coming out of the bye, they're going to be against Philly, and then Vegas should be juicy. At Green Bay, Buffalo, and then Vegas at home again. Cincinnati for the championship should be, again, both teams going off. So I like the schedule, and I like that move. Shout out to Domo for dropping a comment. Heavy. Yo, what's good, Joker? Found you through the homie Caleb. Oh, the baby goat and the Emmy. Yes, I love that guy. Needs some help. So Josh Downs not knowing if he'll be 100%. Henderson with a nobody at QB, or Pop Douglas. I actually think Hendo with the no QB is possibly an upgrade because they're going to have to rely more on the run game, it feels like. So I think it's going to be Hendo and Royce Freeman kind of splitting that load. Henderson's going to get some passing work for sure. The quarterback's going to be looking to check it down today. That's for sure. Whether it's Ripien or if he ends up, getting hurt or something, the dressing kid, whoever that, I literally have no idea who the third quarterback is at this point. But this is, I think I would roll with, it does look like it's going to be Ripien who's going to start. Yeah, I would roll with Hendo there. If Downs plays, though, he's just been such a good PPR play. Pop Douglas. I know the hype on Pop Douglas. You know what? If it was full PPR, I actually might just stay in the flames of a Josh Downs. But if it's like half PPR or just standard, for some reason you're playing standard in the year of 2023, which is totally fine by me, then I think I would still roll with Darrell Henderson there. It just feels like he has the safest floor. Assuming again that if there's something wrong with the knee, more legitimately than we think, and he's actually not able to play through it, that is a potential risk that you have to take. If you remove that, for me, this would easily be the Downs would easily be the answer because he's been so good. And then Pop Douglas, I have trouble trusting Bill Belichick with anything. There's a reason the word Bellatrix exists. And Juju Smith-Schuster is still there. He's relevant. He caught a touchdown last week. He could end up seeing more work. And, through a week of game planning, it'll be interesting to see if Pop Douglas is still as involved. But yeah, no, you know what? This is again the situation of I think I'm going to actually just play it safe and take Darrell Henderson. He's available. He's going to get some gross work. He's probably going to catch 3 to 4 checkdowns, and maybe, just maybe, he falls into the end zone. So he feels like the safest option today, and that could totally blow up in your face. So, if you really need a ceiling play, then, maybe just wait it out for Downs, but I actually don't mind Darrell Henderson. Shout out Mike. Hey Joker, would you rather start Quentin Johnston or stub your little toe? I would rather stub every single one of my toes. And I gotta out myself here. I was really into Quentin Johnston in the off season. Usually, just because I like to take, if there's a bunch of rookie wide receivers that everyone's really hyped on, I just like to take the cheaper one, is kind of what it is. I'm frugal in that way. I'm more of a type of manager where I prefer veterans, actually. I kind of need guys to prove it to me before I just completely buy in. And even superstars, I think people forget, like Justin Jefferson did nothing for an entire half of a season. Derrick Henry did nothing for 2 years. There's tons of guys that people buy in on as rookies and they don't do anything for a while, and you stop believing in them. And then when they finally prove it on an NFL field, which is really hard to do, even just from a real life perspective, sometimes it just takes extra time. And so buying in on rookies, I usually like to just take the cheaper of the guys. And so when it was between JSN and Addison and Flowers and QJ, QJ was usually the cheapest out of all of those, and I was drafting Justin Herbert everywhere. Everywhere I could get Justin Herbert, I was grabbing him because I was convinced that he was going to be a top 5 fantasy quarterback this year, and he's been pretty close. I'd have to double check to confirm. I know he's in the top 10. He must be, with how bad quarterbacks have been this year. But just overall, it feels like scoring is down across the board. Injuries are up across the board. I was just talking on another podcast. Shout out to Tyler Bradley and the Fantasy Football Advice Network. I was on their show the other night and talked about how injuries have been absolutely ravaging the NFL in a way that we are just not used to. Like even the worst injury season that we've had in like 2020 wasn't quite this bad. So it has been rough in these fantasy streets. But in terms of like what's the bar of, so let's see, like who would I be willing to play over Quentin Johnston? I'll give you a perfect example. Scott Fishbowl settings are pretty forgiving. And currently on my Scott Fishbowl team, I do have Quentin Johnston in the lineup. So it's like, who am I starting him over? Okay. Pierre Strong. I'm actually probably starting him over Puka Nacua. Though Puka Nacua is expected to play, he's potentially hampered by a hamstring, and the quarterback, so probably going to play him over Puka. Daniel Bellinger, like that's the level. The one I'm actually debating is Quentin Johnston or Devin Singletary, with Damian Pierce officially out. I think Devin Singletary, that might be the one I end up pivoting to, but I hate the matchup. I actually really like Tampa's run defense, so I'm not super into that. Like Quentin Johnston or Mac Hollins, that's a legitimate debate for me today, because I feel like that's going to be the joke that Arthur Smith plays on fantasy managers today, is everyone's going to hope for the big Kyle Pitts game, and it's going to end up being it's going to be all Mac Hollins and Jonnu Smith. So fantasy is just weird like that. The Jets matchup too, even though he's not going to be going up with Sauce, I like Sauce Gardner, but like this idea that Sauce Gardner is just going to shut down Keenan Allen man to man, it feels like this is just going to be Keenan Allen, Austin Eckler, and yeah, Quentin Johnston might get 5 for 50 again, but I kind of need to see it more. So it's like over actual options. Like we talked about Jordan Addison earlier, I would play him. I would honestly play Jahan Dotson today, probably, because usually New England shuts down that primary option. Curtis Samuel is not going to be available, it seems like. So I'd probably play Jahan Dotson. Devonta Smith, I would play him. Even Brandon Cooks, I feel like, is more likely to be involved today and get a touchdown. I could end up being wrong, but yeah, road matchup with the Jets, just kind of, yeah. We'll move on here. Mike also said Mahomes being the first QB drafted may have been one of the worst picks outside of injury. I don't agree with that necessarily. I mean, Jalen Hurts has been better for fantasy football because he's been more consistent. But I mean, Mahomes has still been excellent. It's just been more touch and go. Last week was definitely abysmal against Denver. That was brutal. But then literally the week before, 32 for 424 and 4 touchdowns. So it hasn't quite been there all year. He kind of had a couple down weeks before that. He had the decent game against Chicago with 3 touchdowns. So I get it. The results haven't been there this year, but Mahomes is a generational quarterback. And so that was the chance that you were taking, was that he was just going to continue doing what he's done for, the last 2 years, basically. And I get it. It's a very what have you done for me lately kind of league, but it's like, you look at last year, just to go back. And again, it was 30, just fantasy points, quickly reading it off. 32, 27, 35, 25, 20, 21, 33, 41, 33, 33, 23, 36, 27. And then 19, 21, 45. That was the whole season. Literally his worst game, except for week 18, which I'm not going to count because week 18 is not a thing. If you play fantasy championships in week 18, you should stop doing that, please. But yeah, his worst game of the entire season last year was 19.58 fantasy points. Like the consistency and dominance that you get from drafting a Mahomes. And also, it's underrated when you have that onesie position of the quarterback or tight end just sewn up, of you don't have to do those guys on waivers ever for the most part. Like you have one bye week, and if your team is dominant enough, you can even just eat that bye week. But for the most part, like you're not having to scramble and waste waiver assets, whether that's time and energy, just evaluating the positions, or actual fab dollars. You're not wasting that time on those positions. You're focused exclusively on running back and wide receiver, which I feel like that is an advantage that doesn't really get talked about enough when you have like that really good quarterback tight end stack. So for me, whether that's Mahomes, Kelsey, or I joked that I'd been priced out of the market and I moved neighborhoods because that one's been gentrified, and I moved into Lamar Jackson and Mandrews Boulevard. And it's been kind of good this year. Again, ebbs and flows. That's something I think gets lost in the sauce too. It's like everyone looks for consistent dominance from fantasy players. For the most part, though, that doesn't actually exist. Like almost every player, even superstars, have ebbs and flows, just like they do in real life. So to expect just like absolute consistency across the board 100% of the time, or else that player is bad. Like, no, dudes can be bad for a year or two and then have like a really good year. It happens all the time. So yeah, I don't think just the results define the results don't always purely define the choice you made in the preseason, And again, there are a lot of people that had Mahomes as the first quarterback. And yeah, Tua's been great. Lamar's been great. Herbert's been great. Even lately, Burrow's been great. So it's like there's lots and lots of good fantasy quarterbacks, and there's an argument to have waited. But Mahomes has been so dominant and consistent for so long that he's actually one of those outliers where he was having the consistently dominant fantasy performances for a long sustained period, like literally a whole year last year. So I get it. Shout out to Heavy. Thanks, man. Downs plays at 4:00. That's the tricky part. Yeah, it's always tricky when you got the 4:00 players, or even worse, the Sunday night or Monday night guys, when they're like kind of probable or questionable or whatever it is. But right now he is tracking to play. He's expected. So again, I would still roll with just rolling back to that question. I would probably take the safe play of Henderson. Shout out Greg Kellogg making a trip over to see the fantasy Joker. Herbert was a good choice. Herbert is QB7 right now. Yes, Herbert was an excellent choice. He was also a good value during fantasy drafts. And he's also telling me that I should be starting Devin Singletary over Mac Hollins and Quentin Johnston. And I don't disagree with you. I probably will make that adjustment. That's kind of part of what I love about doing the early live streams is, again, I don't consider myself a fantasy analyst or an expert. Like, I do this more for the entertainment side of it. And honestly, just as much to entertain myself. But like, I am a huge fan and fanatic. And I've been doing this for a hot minute now. And I don't usually have very many questions in terms of fantasy. I usually kind of have my own answers and my own way of thinking. And a lot of times it's outlier, I feel like, from what a lot of other people end up being in consensus. So that's kind of why I started my channel, to do the comedy and entertainment stuff, but also because, I do feel like I'm decent at fantasy, and so I'll give some advice here and there. Tua over Mahomes today. Oh, man. That's a good problem to have. Like, if you have both of those quarterbacks, like, just play the one that you prefer and you close your eyes and hope. I will say, I think the Chiefs defense is better than the Dolphins defense, but it's going to be on neutral ground because this is the Germany game. So could really go either way. I'm hoping this turns into a crazy game, actually. So I feel like both Mahomes and Tua are going to crush today. Again, if you're asking me just safe floor, probably Mahomes still, even though he's had his struggles. Again, I just feel like Miami defense gives it up a little bit more than the Chiefs defense. The only thing that would concern me is maybe the Chiefs would be more prone to rely on the running game, given that the Dolphins are more banged up and the Chiefs are a better run defense. This is Tyreek revenge week, though. It's hard not to play Tua. Again, it's like you have Tua and Mahomes. That's a good problem to have. Final answer, I think I'm going to play Tua because it just feels like with Tyreek on his side, going against the Chiefs is the first time Tyreek's facing the Chiefs. If Tyreek has like a 200-yard game, that's going to benefit Tua directly. And so that's kind of where I'm rolling with, where I don't see the wide receiver. Like, yes, Travis Kelce, but like Travis Kelce's ceiling is probably 125, maybe 150 yards in like a crazy game. But like Tyreek could easily blow up for 200 yards, and you still have Jalen Waddle and other pieces, auxiliary options. I think I'm rolling with Tua, and the neutral game site makes me feel a little bit better than if he was playing in Arrowhead. Oh yeah, and in week 1, Kelce was out. He's still quarterback 3, and Scott Fishbowl says Greg Kellogg. I'm assuming he's talking about Mahomes, I think. Luke Musgrave or Hunter Henry this week from Tyler Bradley. Ugh, that's wow. That is unfortunate, my man. Musgrave, I guess. Look, Hunter Henry was a great streamer week 1 when Travis Kelce wasn't available, but I haven't recommended to play him in a hot minute. I do kind of like the matchup against the Manders. It feels like it could end up being a little bit more high scoring, but I liked it better when he wasn't splitting work with Mike Gesicki. Maybe we see more Hunter Henry because of the injury. I don't necessarily count on it, though. I think I'm going to still roll with Musgrave. The Packers offense has been just as bad. That feels like a toss-up. Actually, I'm going to switch my answer. I'm going to go purely just with what I expect to be a more high-scoring matchup and just like more of a coin flip of maybe he does something. I'm actually really going to roll with Hunter Henry, even though, as Greg says here, he's had 2, 3, 3, and 3 targets in his last 4 games. So pretty bad. Ripien greater than 15 points, please, from my boy Raphael Quinton. And he also says Finn's fully healthy on defense. Yeah, it doesn't matter if they're fully healthy. If both teams being fully healthy, I would still take the Chiefs defense over the Finns defense. Like, they've got some good players, but overall the Chiefs just play better as a unit. And Musgrave, again, Kellogg coming back. Musgrave has 7-5, 3 and 3 targets, and a favorable matchup. He's rolling with Musgrave. I'm rolling with Hunter Henry. So me and Greg Kellogg having a battle in the chats here. They're both, I guess, even with the what's a favorable matchup for the Green Bay Packers at this point in time? Like, let's see. Packers are facing the Rams. Yeah. That one feels like it could just end up being a really low-scoring, gross game, especially if he's getting chased around by Aaron Donald. No, I'm still rolling with Hunter Henry. Again, at that point, I'm just taking the shot and hoping and praying. All right, we got JC jumping in here. Conklin versus Chargers. Janu versus Vikings. Cade Otton versus Houston. Michael Myers / Michael Mayer versus the Giants. Or Bellinger versus Vegas. You know what? Kind of crazy, but I'm actually rolling with Daniel Bellinger. Like, you just gave me a whole bunch of gross options. But the last thing in his comment says Bellinger taking over for Waller. and it's at Vegas. So first of all, the Vegas matchup has been really good. Even though I kind of think that they could step it up a little bit with Antonio Pierce. I kind of like Bellinger. I liked him even last year kind of as a sneaky tight end play. If Daniel Jones especially is playing, they kind of have a sneaky connection. I kind of like Bellinger. Though Cade Otton is the most like hysterical. Like if you just need like 3 for 40, like you just want 8 points from your tight end. Like, yeah. Jonnu though, he's been really good. Jonnu is like super annoying for Kyle Pitts managers. And with Heineke, like I think everyone's expecting the big Pitts game. It could end up just as easily being Jonnu Smith. They run so much tight end too. One of the first videos I did on my channel, or I guess one of the first shorts was about how Atlanta runs the most tight end 2 sets in the NFL under Arthur Smith. So if you're talking about pure opportunity, Greg Kellogg came down in the comments. Daniel Jones is back, confirmed. And he doesn't trust Ripien, loves his uncle. I agree. No, I'm going with final answer. Yeah, no, I'm going to roll with Bellinger. I'm going to take the fact that he's like the starter and probably will get those looks to himself and has that kind of sneaky connection. I do think it could end up being Jonnu Smith, but I'm going to roll. I'm going to take the chance on Bellinger. All right. We'll jump back into, let's go check out the actual Fantasy Football at Nice network. Add Vice. Luke Musgrave or Cade Otton this week. I'm going with Musgrave in that situation. Oh, here's a tight end choice that I have to make myself in a league. Trey McBride or Taysom Hill. Trey McBride had that awesome breakout week. Taysom Hill is Taysom Hill. He does Taysom Hill things. The matchup, though, with the Saints against Chicago, that just feels like it feels like Taysom Hill has to be involved. Oh, I don't like it. This is definitely one of those times where it's like obviously like Taysom Hill should be involved and like should have a good game and will absolutely disappear on you. That's exactly what he does. I'm rolling with. I can't do McBride. I can't do it. I'm assuming that it's going to be Clayton Tune for realsies, and he is not. I don't think he's a competent like NFL starting quarterback. So I'm gonna roll with Taysom Hill still for this week, and if Kyler Murray, by some miracle of miracles, comes back and ends up playing, then I'll be wrong for this week, and Trey McBride will be in my lineup rest of the year. If it's Clayton Tune and he's just hyper targeting Trey McBride, like 15 targets, and he still has a good game just by pure volume alone, all right, then I might be more into it. But I need to see it. I need to see it from Clayton Tune specifically, that he is like, above Nathan Peterman level of NFL quarterback. Like, I just need to see that this guy can be even an average NFL starter before I trust any kind of passing option. So for me, all of Arizona's out today, especially like you got Myles Garrett on the other side of the ball. Like, no thanks. Jump back in here. Let's see. Trade Brandon Ayuk for Amari Cooper? No, no. Ayuk all the way. If you could somehow pivot Amari Cooper and a piece or two into Brandon Ayuk, that would be highway robbery, it feels like. Need to in the flex. Amari Cooper, Jordan Addison, Rashee Rice, Josh Downs, or Gus Bus. And also, they're looking for upside because they already played George Pickens. So if you need the upside, then I'm actually going with spicy decision. I'm actually going to go with Rashee Rice and Gus Bus because Ravens are at home and they tend to lean on the run. And Gus is the primary guy right now, so I'm leading with Gus. But I actually like Rashee Rice because I don't know how the quarterback situation will affect Jordan Addison, who's been excellent with Kirk Cousins, but now with Kirk Cousins out for the year and Jaron Hall taking over today. So I'll like Jordan Addison a lot more once it is Dobbs in there. But for Jaron Hall's sake, I have no idea what that represents. So being that I already had one flop in my lineup and I'm trying to avoid another, I think Rashee Rice could end up having like a good game and hit his ceiling with the Miami matchup. He's kind of taken over like that Juju Smith-Schuster role that the Chiefs had in their offense. So I like Rice and Gus. Final decision. All right, let's jump back into the chats because we've got a couple chats rolling in. So Raphael Quinton, Cole Kmet or Bellinger. I would go with Kmet there. Kmet has the PPR floor. He's kind of been peppered by Badgett. He's kind of the only relevant option outside of DJ Moore for me. So I actually like Cole Kmet. And then Greg Kellogg. McBride has a higher floor. Tune is starting. That's exactly why I disagree with you, unfortunately, Mr. Greg Kellogg. I don't think he has a higher floor because Clayton Tune is starting. And I watched Clayton Tune hit a defensive back in the back of the noodle during training camp, and I can't get that image out of my mind. Maybe he's grown over this like 8 weeks, but I'm just not expecting really anything at all from from Clayton Tune. And JC Taysom is my starting quarterback in Scott Fishbowl because he's my only option. Yeah, that sucks. You know, with bye weeks and injuries, I think unfortunately a lot of teams are going to find themselves in that kind of situation where Taysom Hill might be their starting quarterback rather than a tight end hack. So Greg Kellogg says Ayuk is not playing at the same level as expected. Well, I don't exactly, again, maybe people just have different expectations, and that's definitely something that plays into fantasy football. Like if you were expecting him to just like explode for like 1,515, then yeah, maybe he's not meeting expectations. But I mean, yeah, it's just the lack of touchdowns I feel like is really the big problem. Coming off a game 5 for 109, 5 for 57, 4 for 76, 4 for 58, 6 for 148. He has been kind of like quietly consistent, good, but not great. Yeah, I think people were expecting really a true breakout. He has been, wide receiver 20 or outside of wide receiver 20 for the last 4 weeks. But coming off the bye week, they also have a much easier schedule for the rest of the season. So we'll kind of see how that plays out. And also just, this is kind of goes to the Brock Purdy debate of, is Brock Purdy like a great NFL quarterback? No, I don't think he is, like Tom Brady level. I don't think he's like some amazing quarterback, but I also don't think he's bad. I think he is what he is. He's a good game managing quarterback that fits well into Shanahan's system, and he's going to have bad games. I mean, Tom Brady had bad games, so it's like, yeah, it happens. I think it gets a little lost in the sauce again. Real life football should always take priority in your mind over fantasy football. And if you kind of prioritize it that way, you won't always have like the same type of expectations maybe. And maybe that's a way to temper expectations. Rashid versus B-Rob from Niner MMA 86. Shout out to you in the comments. Oof, yeah, that's a hard one for me. I have B-Rob going today. New England surprisingly hasn't been that tough of a run defense, but Brian Robinson, just the type of running back that he is, unfortunately, doesn't really lend well to playing from behind or, necessarily in shootouts. I think I would take the pot shot on Rashid Shaheed, especially, again, this is kind of one of those things where if I'm 2-6 and I'm swinging for the fences, and I need a flex play to overcome a better team, then I'm going to go with Rashid Shaheed because to me, there's more chance that he just goes 3 for 100 and a touchdown against the Bears defense compared to, the idea that Brian Robinson's going to grind out 20 carries and 80 yards and 2 touchdowns against the Patriots on the road. And it could easily just turn out that Shaheed busts. But again, you're swinging for the fences. So I kind of get to a mode of, when I'm 2-6, 1-7, whatever it is, I just start pushing my chips all in of like, I'm going to take all the guys that the potential outcome is either 20 points or 0. Like at that point, I start looking to trade away Brian Robinson's for, here's a Jerome Ford. And the Jerome Ford manager might look you in the face and laugh at you, honestly, with how the two have performed. But that's just like a situation where, like, I could feasibly see Jerome Ford having like a 5-point game and a 20-point game. And, Brian Robinson just kind of is more of a floor play versus a ceiling. So that's kind of a situation where, again, if my teams are struggling, I'm going with the Rashid Shaheed boom shot. And I'm going all boom shots. Like my whole lineup's going to be boom shots. And we're either going to score 150 points this week or 60. But I'm going for it all at that point. And I've done that before where you kind of start stringing wins together. You get lucky, you get a couple teams sleeping. Yeah. And, shout out Greg Kellogg coming back in the comments. I give points for return yards, and Shaheed is wide receiver 7, so scoring system matters 100%. It's actually one of the best advice I can give is above analyzing players, individual players, you should be analyzing in your own league settings. So whether that's different scoring settings, whether that's different roster settings, there's always different ways of manipulating and finding advantages within those settings and knowing which players to target because of that. Greg Kellogg said it. If you have a league that really values return yardage, which is not every league, in fact, it's kind of uncommon, then that can change the value of certain players and make them more valuable than they would otherwise be. I think it gets overlooked, the difference between a wide receiver, start 2 wide receivers and start 3 wide receivers, where you have the locked in wide receiver like roster slot. I tend to go super heavy wide receivers because, between the flex options and everything that happens and injuries and all the stuff, like those 3 wide receiver spots, they get you in ways you don't really expect because you're like, oh, it's just one more. It makes a big difference through the year. So learning how to manipulate scoring and roster settings is definitely, even more important than learning how to assess individual players, it feels like. And what's cool about it, to touch on some different fantasy sports, is it actually translates into other games and you learn lessons from playing other fantasy sports that you can apply to fantasy football and vice versa. So I play a lot of fantasy hockey, and one of the things with hockey is a lot of leagues will have like 4 defense spots only and like 6 forwards and then 2 flex. And it's like in a flex spot, you're going to play a forward 90% of the time over a defense. So just math wise, you're basically saying 8 forwards to 4 defense. So a lot of my leagues, I just punt on defense guys, and I'll pick up guys off waivers that are hot or, whatever, stream them in, and I'll just load up on forwards in the draft and kind of, really aim to get a lot of forwards and trades and that kind. So just learning again, okay, well, I'm learning how to manipulate a roster setting in a league, regardless of the sport. It could be basketball, same thing. In basketball, I have a league with a buddy where he set it up. And I don't know if he kind of realized it when he was setting it up or not, but he set it up to where he has like 6 to 8 spots where you can put either a shooting guard or a small forward. And he's only got 2 spots that are true center. So having like guys that are only center, it's really not that valuable. And I waited and I got guys that, are just kind of a smidge below, but they're getting just as many points. And when you're doing the streaming stuff, you make up for those top guys. But it's like all my top guys that I took are filling out those 6 roster spots every week. And it's the same idea in football. Again, you have a league where it's 3 wide receiver and 2 flex. It's probably easier to just have 5 wide receivers that you're starting every week because they tend to just, get the higher scoring ceilings as compared to the running backs, especially what we've seen this year. So, shout out to the 0 running back truthers out there because it has really hit this year. It feels like between the injuries and the situations, even with someone like Bijan Robinson, who's been absolutely maddening because his real life talent is far superior than how he's been used by Arthur Smith, which, every fantasy football manager has lamented. We'll jump back in for a couple more questions and then we'll get on out of here. That was a quick hour. So we stopped off at Chuba Hubbard or Zach Moss. Actually, no. We stopped off at the defensive questions. Here we go. Rashee Rice or T. Higgins? I haven't really been a big proponent of T. Higgins. He was on my bust list. And again, when I make a bust list, for me, it's not talent. Usually it's about ADP and situation. So the reason I had T. Higgins on my bust list is because I just didn't see him having a 1,500-yard season behind Jamar Chase. And then especially like with all the stuff that happened with Burrow early, he's had his struggles. And so unfortunately, if you took him like really high, it probably hasn't felt that great this year. But this week, that is a tough one. Bengals Bills feels like it's going to be a nice matchup, though. I'm going with T. Higgins in this one. Jets, Raiders, or Patriots, DST. I'm going with the Patriots officially. Like, I actually like the Patriots defense more at home in general. And, Howell just still takes so many sacks and turnovers, come from getting sacked a lot. So I'm going with the Patriots actually over the Raiders, over the Jets. Dalton Kincaid or McBride. For me, that's Kincaid. I'm going with consensus there. Singletary, Dotson, or Brown, Hollywood. I'm going with Dotson there, actually. I'm going with the ceiling play. Again, trying to avoid floor plays because it feels like at this point you're either 2-6 or 6-2. If you're 4-4, I guess you're kind of still treading water a little bit, but I guess put it in the perspective of like if you're facing a really high scoring team and you need upside versus a floor, then I'm going with Dotson. If you just need the safe floor because you are the heavyweight, then go with Singletary. Pittman, Ford, or Rashee Rice, flex 2. I'm going with Pittman and Ford. I actually really like Jerome Ford today. Lamar Jackson or Tua. That one's hard, actually. I think Lamar Jackson today. even over Tua. Just because Tua is on neutral ground and Lamar Jackson, the last time he had something to play for at home was against the Lions, and we saw what happened. So I'm kind of rolling with Jackson, but that's an absolutely fantastic decision to have to make. Oh, here's a gross one. Pick 2, Gabe Davis, Christian Watson, DK Metcalf, Puka Nacua, Rashee Rice. So Puka is trending to play. Unfortunately, Matt Stafford will be out, though. It's going to be Mr. Brett ripping passes. So I expect that whole passing game to be tempered. So I'm probably still playing Cooper Kupp, hoping for 6 for 60. I don't know about Puka Nacua. I think I'm rolling with Gabe Davis. Even though Gabe Davis has kind of been hit or miss, the Bengals matchup feels like he shows up kind of for those bigger games. It feels like potentially they're going to need him. So I could see it being a good Gabe Davis game. You just can't play Christian Watson right now. He's getting targets still, but it's just been awful. So you know what? I'm actually rolling with Gabe Davis and DK Metcalf, even over Rashee Rice. I do like Rashee Rice a lot today, though, so I get it. But DK Metcalf had, like, even though it wasn't a great game, he had like 10 plus targets last week, I feel like. Let me just vet that real fast. Oh, yeah, 14 targets last week. And then he missed that the week before, and then he had 9 targets the week before. So he's still getting heavily targeted. Again, the results haven't been great, but this just feels like I'm hoping for a high-scoring game. I'm hoping, unlike the Lions, that Seattle can show up for this and we get like a nice, 50-plus point game. I'm hoping this hits the over. So I'm going to roll with DK. Just as hoping that he gives me the ceiling that I need. Shout out to Greg Kellogg. Bye, guys. Nice show, Joker. Thank you, Greg, for joining in today. And I thought I turned everything off for a second there. Shout out to Greg for joining today. Shout out to everybody for joining today. JC, Raphael, Niner MMA 86. Who am I missing here? Tyler Bradley in the comments. All you guys in the comments, I super appreciate it. Mike and Heavy, also, you guys, shout out. Domo, Origato, Mr. Roboto. And on that terrible joke, I'm signing off. I super appreciate you listeners out there. If you're still here, hey, go check out Wildcard Wednesdays. Those are unrelated to fantasy football. They're actually super fun, low-key shows I get to do with other content creators. And I ask all kinds of fun questions about creating content, but also just dumb hypotheticals that are a lot of fun. And they are officially available in podcast form on Spotify. So you can check them out there. You can get them on YouTube, the OG videos as well. Drop me a like and subscribe. And as always, I will catch you guys on the flip side.
He's running down the middle by the 50. He's at the 30. He's bare-chested and banging his chest. Now he runs the opposite way. He runs at the 50. He runs at the 40. The guy is drunk, but there he goes. The 20. They're chasing him. They're not going to get him. Waving his arms, bare-chested. Somebody stop that man. Here comes